So today is the feast of Christ the King. What does that mean? What do you think of when you think about kings or royalty, or the word king comes up? Maybe some of you thought about contemporary things like baby George, son of Duchess Catherine and William of Wales. Remember that story this year? Newest prince of the realm of Britain has been recently hailed the third in line for the English throne, a king. It's fine for the British to call him king or talk about a lineage like that, but for us Americans, king is kind of an odd sort of idea. It's not a political idea that we really understand very well. When we say the king, who do you think of? Elvis, the king of rock and roll, or the king, Michael Jackson, the king of pop. What's that? Martin Luther King Jr., and we're going to come to him too. Martin Luther King Jr., of course, is a king named after a king. The king of Wall Street, Donald Trump. The LA Kings, the hockey team. The Sacramento Kings, the basketball. We have king snakes. We also have king fishers. We have king crabs. Well, we're not nearby. But somebody will probably have king chicken a la king. We play King of the Mountain. There's Martin Luther King Jr. Is it starting to be clear about this idea about king? And maybe it's not as clear as it seems. There's the Kings of Leon. It's a rock group. B.B. King for blues fans. There's Stephen King. Burger King. King Arthur Flower, Carole King, King Salmon, The Lion King, which is playing until, December 13th? Stephen Martin sings King Tut. And then, of course, we're in the church, so we have to talk about the King James version of the Bible. Has the notion of king taken on a sort of a different meaning for us? I think so. It seems that king maybe no longer the most effective kind of term for us. It's not as evocative as a title as it might be in some cultures. We might instead say Christ the Messiah. But that's kind of redundant, isn't it? Because Christ and Messiah are really terms that mean the same kind of thing. And maybe it's been kind of trivialized over the years. Sometime back I was watching ABC's Good Morning America, and they reported that the name Messiah, the baby name Messiah, is the 387th most popular baby name in the United States. Anybody know a Messiah? According to Good Morning America, if you count yourself among those Americans who believe there is only one true Messiah, you may want to speak to the parents of the 811 children who were given the increasingly popular name last year. Prince and princess are becoming popular names as well. You may know a prince or a princess, but the popularity of the baby name King has grown faster than any other royal title. It's now the 256th most popular baby name in the United States, even more popular than Jonathan. Can you believe it? Dr. Gene Twigg, a psychologist and author of the book Narcissism Epidemic, you can see where this is going, told Good Morning America that the rising popularity of these royal-sounding baby names mirrors a current national preoccupation with money, power, and fame. That's today. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It was back in 1920 to counter a growing sense of secularism that Pope Pius XI declared that there should be a celebration of the reign of Christ, and they decided it would be on the last Sunday of the church year, and so they set aside this Sunday, the last Sunday of the church year, as Christ the King Sunday, or the Reign of Christ Sunday, and Anglicans and American Lutherans followed suit, declaring the last Sunday of ordinary time, or as we call it, last Sunday of Pentecost, the last Sunday of the liturgical year, the feast of Christ the King. Other churches have done similar things over the years with this observance. Our Swedish brothers, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Sweden, I had to look this up last week because someone challenged me, one of the older members of the congregation. I talked about we're not doomsday preppers last week, and somebody suggested that I look up because there's some church that does this. The Evangelical Church of Sweden appoints for this Sunday. They refer to this Sunday as the Sunday of Doom. So I stand corrected. The Swedes, those happy guys. So here we are. Not being Swedish, it's easy for me to say. Here we are between turkey and football and twinkling lights of Christmas, reading a gospel lesson about the crucifixion of Jesus on a Sunday in which we proclaim him the King. Sunday of Doom. Might be just as fitting. So what does it tell us about ourselves that the church has set aside a Sunday to remind us that Christ is sovereign, that the reign of Christ will move from the end of things into forever? What does it tell us about the Christ as we celebrate him as a king? Once upon a time, Christ might have been hailed as a king in the midst of people who understood what kingship was all about, and particularly Christ's kingship over them. But we don't any longer understand kings, their purpose and meaning, and oftentimes it's changed into a negative idea, evidenced by the fact that we're naming our children King more often than Jonathan these days. We need a corrective, though, to our consumer culture, don't we? We need to be reminded that there's something else at the center of the universe. There's something else holding it together than me, myself, and I, whatever our name may be. And today's lesson from the epistle to the Colossians, I think, does just this, lifting up in kind of high language, may you be made strong with all the strength that comes from his glorious power, and may you be prepared to endure everything with patience, while joyfully giving thanks to the Father who has enabled you to share in the inheritance of all the saints. Barb, your lesson was fitting, given the Colossians reading. That's the point of Christ the King in this time, to remind us that we aren't the center of our universe, that finally and ultimately Christ is, and that maybe the centering of ourself and our universe needs to be disoriented so that we can finally find an orientation that makes some sense for how things really are. That we should be challenged to gird ourselves with a strength greater than us, with a power to foresee any Sundays or days of doom, with the glorious understanding that we are held no matter what's up society's nose, to quote from Ned, or no matter what tomorrow might bring. To give praise and thanks and glory to the King of Kings and to the Lord of Lords. What does it mean that he is king? That he is to reign? What does it mean for all of us as church? And what does it mean for you as a follower of Jesus? Again, from today's reading from Colossians. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell. And through him God was pleased to reconcile all things to himself, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace through the blood of the cross. He's not exactly the kind of king that this world understands. I don't know who fell off, but we'll put him back on. He's not exactly the kind of king that this world understands. Mel Brooks said it. It's good to be the king. Why is it good to be the king? Because you get a narcissist fantasy. Because you are in charge of everything and you can take advantage and exploit and have things your way, but that's just not reality. And if you live long enough, you come to the understanding that your will be subject to something far greater than me, myself, and I. And therefore your will and the wills of everyone will have to be subject to something far greater than that. And so on this Sunday, we remind ourselves of this strange king that we have. This one that you see in our gospel reading strung up by the Roman Empire for treason and insurrection. And it turns out he's not merely challenging the order of things. He's actually overturning them altogether and establishing a new reign governed not by might or power or judgment or fame or wealth, the powers that this world seems to wield, but rather a reign that's marked instead by love and mercy and grace. For he's a strange kind of king, especially if we're thinking of worldly kings, reigning from his unlikely throne of the cross, granting to you and I the high gift of second chances and forgiveness and grace, exemplifying courageous obedience, being completely not self-absorbed, but self-assured from the tree of the cross, his throne. And so from there, instead of being tortured or terrified or angry, he over and over again from that throne continues to reign and offer to you and to me, to the thief and to those who crucify him, the currency of the kingdom: forgiveness, grace, mercy, holiness fought by sacrifice, and mercy given to all, as a model and as the way for his reign, as a model and a way for you and I who name him Christ the King, that we would live into those things that are the marks of his kingdom. We talk a lot about kings and we name a lot of things with that same title, but in the end, there's only one who matters for the life of this world and for the next: Christ, our King. So on this Sunday butted right up against Thanksgiving, let us take a moment to just adore him for this King that is so unlike any other worldly king, for this coming of God who teaches us more than anything else what it means to be a human being, to live by love and grace and forgiveness, and to have a different currency than what most of our lives are ruled by, the currency of grace.